Hello everyone, happy April and welcome to another episode of the Drunken Boxing Podcast. This month we are at episode 23 of the Drunken Boxing Podcast. Let's first cover some general news. Over on the Mushin Martial Culture YouTube channel, I have started to release a series of videos from a lecture my Shifu, Guoyong, gave at the Peking University around 9 years ago or so. It was a long lecture where he covered quite a few aspects related to Xingyiquan and Baguazhang, as well as traditional Chinese martial arts as a whole. I am releasing it in episode forms, as it is quite long. And 2 episodes are out already, so head on over and check it out. Also, I'm finalizing a new episode of Kung Fu Explained, which is continuing in the Shaolin Legacy series on the temple's history. The next episode should be ready for release quite soon, so keep an eye out. In other news, a new item is going to be released on the Mushin Martial Culture merchandise store sometime this month. I won't give any details away, but I had an idea for an interesting and fun design that I'm busy finalizing, which hopefully you guys will like. In the meantime, our other items are still available, including the Sun Lutang tribute items, as well as the Bengquan t-shirt. So head on over to the store and check it out. You can find it at our Mushin Martial Culture Teespring store. A link is in the show notes here. As always, support for the podcast is highly appreciated, which you may pledge through the Mushin Martial Culture Patreon site. Apart from the general support tiers, there is a third tier, the Huajin tier, which is the online learning tier. Here you have the ability to study the arts of Xingyiquan and Baguazhang from me. The current library of lesson videos is already quite substantial and it's continually growing. And there are other benefits included to assist you to develop and grow in the practice in an extremely productive manner. If you like what you have seen from my primer videos on YouTube, you will truly enjoy the learning programs, deep content. Currently, we are actually introducing aspects of the Liang-style Baguazhang system, as well as continuing on with the progression in the Hebei Xingyiquan lineage and system that I inherited from my teacher, Guoyong. It's quite a lot of interesting and in-depth content that I'm quite sure any of you that are interested in the art would be quite keen to see. Anyway, the Patreon site may be found at patreon.com/Mushin Martial Culture. That's all one word, Mushin Martial Culture. Again, the links are in the show notes. In other news, my friend and previous guest on episode 10 of the Drunken Boxing Podcast, Lavelle Marshall, who is still permanently living and training in the grasslands of Inner Mongolia, has just recently made available some fantastic Shuaijiao and Mongolian Bokh wrestling jackets and pants. Mongolian Bokh jackets, as far as I recall, have not been available to the West in the past, and Lavelle has created some great high-quality jackets for both of these disciplines, which you may get from him directly. He has a few designs available for both men and women, and I have seen the quality of these items, which is really top-notch. Those of you who are interested in these items, get in contact with him, as this is another way to support him in his pioneering endeavors in these arts. He will be launching a website in the next few days at bochinayin.com. And you can also get in contact with him through his Instagram, which is Rebel in the Wind Shaolin, one word, or at bochinayin. All these links are also in the show notes here. Okay, moving on to today's episode. My guest today is Phil Morrell. Phil hails from the United Kingdom and is a practitioner of Fan style Bagua Zhang under Wen Dasheng. Fan style is a rare style of Bagua outside of China and comes down through Dong Haichuan student Fan Zhiyong, who was also known as the Madman for his intense speed and ferocity in the art. Phil Morrell has trained in Beijing under Wen Dasheng, who is the official lineage holder for the art for many years. He recounts his history and training in the art and discusses the intricacies of the style of Bagua Zhang in this episode. As usual, it was a very interesting and enjoyable discussion. He currently teaches the art, and you may visit his website at www.funbagua.co.uk or his Facebook page, which is SX Fun Family Baguazhang. As usual, the links to both are also in the show notes. So, let's get right into it. I bring you Phil Morrell. Okay, welcome to the Drunken Boxing Podcast, Mr. Morrell. I'm very happy that we finally got a chance to do this. How are you doing?
Not too bad. And yourself?
Carrying on as best as we can in the world in the state it is today. We originally planned to do this in person. The last time I saw you was in Beijing. What was it now? 2 years, almost. Well, it was 2019, right?
Yes, a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah. So this is the next best option that we could do apart from doing it face to face. But I was wondering if maybe for the people that don't know your background, etc., if you could give a brief introduction about yourself and your background and your martial arts, etc.
Right, yeah. Well, you call me Phil. So I'm from Manchester originally, born and bred in Manchester. I started my martial arts when I was about 9 or 10 with Wado karate and a bit of judo. I did Wado for some time. Used to travel to London regularly to see Tatsuo Suzuki, who was the head of the system at the time in the UK. Um, and as I got a little older, I started to do some other arts, more interested in Chinese arts. And at that time, in the 70s, this was Lao Ga was a big group in the UK, and I had the pleasure of being a student of a gentleman who's unfortunately passed, called George Wellington. Lao Ga
Okay.
was very much a combatty group. They liked both full contact and semi-contact fighting. They produced quite a lot of very good fighters, and I was lucky to practice with the likes of Alfie Lewis and Steve Babs, Neville Ray. You probably won't know these people, but the UK people might do. And then I went to an event run by a gentleman called Danny Connor. He used to run a shop in Manchester called Oriental World.
Okay.
Danny'd done martial arts for years, and he was one of the very first people in the very early 80s to go over to Beijing and do Tai Chi, and had done Wado karate in the past, and had brought a lot of martial artists over to the UK. And I went to one of his events, and there was two Taekwondo men, and they did the names were Sken and Toddy, and they did a demonstration of their traditional art, which was Thai boxing, which we'd hardly seen a great deal of in the UK in those times. This was about 1978.
So
And they
Thailand,
did
Muay Thai is it you?
Muay Thai and weapons as well.
Okay.
It was so well received that Master Sken and Master Toddy, with two of their friends Woody and Master A, built a very large following in Thai boxing in the Manchester area and then throughout the country. But I was doing as much martial arts as I could by then. I was still at school, but was going to everything I could do in every event. And one day I was in Chinatown and I saw a couple of people in strange uniforms going into the back of a restaurant.
Okay.
So I hung around for a while and eventually followed them off to the community centre, which is in central Manchester, where I met an old Chinese gentleman called Chu Su Wen was his name, Master Chu. And I started training with him. He taught an old style of Hung Gar, Hung Tren.
Okay.
He was a lovely man. To this day, probably one of the best martial artists I've ever met, if not the best.
Wow.
He traditionally trained from a young age, had travelled through China, had worked with his teacher on bone setting and traditional medicine in the south of China. He was fantastic. He's still going. In fact, he's in his 90s. Still lives in Manchester. A fantastic man.
I've actually found sorry to interrupt you, but now that you mentioned that he's a Hungar practitioner in his 90s, I've actually found, contrary to what people believe, like Tai Chi being, an art of longevity, I found that the people that do Hungar live an exceptionally long time. And you can take a look at the Hong Kong derived from the Lam family people. They've all lived for pretty long periods of time. I mean, and it kind of flies in the face what people are trying to sell out there, like internal, external, healthy, not healthy. It's just interesting that you mentioned that.
Yeah, you have to have both.
Yeah.
You have to have in and out. You have to have softness and strength. One without the other is no good. And if you've got them both and you work on them both, then that's what gets you the longevity.
I agree.
I was very lucky with him. He was a member of the Hong Kong Chinese Martial Arts Association from the get-go of that, and so I got to meet a lot of visiting teachers who came over from Hong Kong. The head of the association at the time was Chan Hon Chung, and he came over to visit my teacher, and I met a lot. There's a lot of people that most people won't recognise who listen to this podcast, but a famous actor, Quan Tak Hing, and people from Wing Chun and people from Pat May, So Kim Kwong from Pat May. I was very lucky to see a lot of different martial arts, and at the same time, I saw my first what is now modern day wushu
performance.
The newspaper group, The Mirror, brought over a wushu and qigong troupe. This was, I've tried to find the date and I can't find the date, but I think it was early 80s, very early 80s.
Okay.
And Master Chu knew one of the qigong troupe, so we got to go and see them and have a chat and meet them backstage. Yeah. But these were the original students from university, the university students who when wushu sort of first started with the set forms.
Yeah. Like competitive sport wushu, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the competitive sport wushu. So they had half of it was the competitive sport, and then half of it was the village practitioners doing breaking and lying on spears and all the heavy, hard qigong.
You know, that's funny you mention that, because I've literally just recently seen somebody post video of that particular performance that you're talking about. I can't recall.
Yes, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it just recently I saw it, probably 3 weeks ago, and exactly as you explained it. And somebody, I don't know who put it up on YouTube, but they were putting it up for posterity's sake, for the fear of losing, for the fear of losing it. But yeah, it's exactly as you've explained it.
Yes, I've still got the VHS tape.
Okay.
That came with it. They performed in Manchester and I think in Liverpool and definitely in London, and they did several shows. Mm-hmm. It was for a young man. It was quite spectacular, and then actually to meet some of them was very good.
Yeah, it was striking. It was striking that you mentioned, and the way you explained it was the first thing that I saw. I mean, this is quite common. I mean, today, but people can see it so clear there that the people that were doing the hard qigong, the breaking, and all of that were not the same people that were doing the Taolu forms. Those were two different groups of people. It was almost as if you had the I don't know how you could say, the socially acceptable with the correct appearance coming out to do the performance, and then you got your rough guys that came out to do this hard qigong. And what struck me the most was a couple of things, because I've seen hundreds of these performances both in China and outside over the last 20 years. And what struck me about that performance is that the guys that came to do the hard qigong, they were not doing circus tricks. They were actually very well conditioned. You could see these people had trained this stuff for their life. Some of the stuff they were doing there, you don't see people performing anymore.
No, they say they were all, I say my teacher at that time knew the big guy, the really big guy that's on that video from the past. And yes, they were all village practitioners. Master Chu used to say that when he was a young man, they used to go from village to village with his teacher to sell their medicine, the dit da, and the other bits and pieces. And quite often, when they were there, they had to do a demonstration. They had to break things and do various different qigong exercises to show that their medicine kept them fit and active. And quite often, there'd be a challenge. If there was a local school there, somebody put somebody up to do. He often used to call it friendly exchange.
I'm sure.
And he said although he never won all of them, he never got killed. So he thought it was going quite well. But there were a lot of a lot of village styles and a lot of very good people in his, like 90 years ago, 80, 90 years ago, all through the villages, all through China, doing their own little things, all very good at it.
Well, that's
eventually,
amazing. Yeah. Go ahead.
Eventually, I moved to London for work when I was 20. So 1980, well, 21, 1985, I moved to London and joined the police.
Yes.
And was sent to central London, which covered Oxford Street, Regent Street, all the way down through Soho, Chinatown into Leicester Square, that sort of area. And because I'd actually never been to London before, except for my interview, they put me up. They gave us accommodation in those days, and my accommodation was in the middle of Soho. I had a room in the middle of Soho with 600 other officers. So I was 5 minutes from I was 5 minutes from Chinatown, and like 7 or 8 minutes from Leicester Square. So I started working there. The hours were such that I couldn't keep going backwards and forwards to Manchester, so I started looking around for other things. So luckily there was a lot of martial arts in London, mid-80s.
Yeah.
So I did practically everything I could find, and that was my first sort of brush with any Tai Chi. I did some Tai Chi with a man you might have heard of, Dan Doherty.
Yes.
Who was quite prolific in that time. It was very, very good, and it was interesting. It was interesting how he taught it. It was a lot more. There was a lot more physical contact in how he taught it. We even did sort of bag work and wrestling skills and techniques as all part of the class, and I quite enjoyed it. I was still being drawn from some of the other things that I'd done, because I'd done lion dancing and dragon dancing and unicorn dancing, and I liked all that sort of part of Southern Chinese martial arts. So I started doing some Pak Mei, white eyebrow, with Tang Choi Tak, Tony Tang. And while I was doing that, I got opportunities to do Southern Praying Mantis, Iron Ox Praying Mantis with a gentleman called Ho Gung Hua, and various other mantis systems. And as all that was going on, I then had a change. That was for the first sort of 2 years I was there, but then I had a change in where I was working, and I went to do protection duties for the royal family. So I did just over 2 and a bit years doing armed protection duties for mainly the Waleses. Show my age, William and Harry were kids you could bounce on your knee when I was there.
But I remember you actually telling me that. I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, see them now, but they were little when I was there, so that was a long time ago. So I did that for about 2.5 years. I must admit I got a bit bored at the end, and came back out onto the streets. Went back and was lucky enough to get a posting back into the central London.
Okay.
And while I was while I was settling myself in there, I went back to doing Pak Mei with Tony Tang. I then got an opportunity to work as one of the main officers for Chinatown for London.
Okay.
And to deal with organised crime and Chinatown as a whole.
Wow.
The problem was that as soon as I started that, I could no longer really be a member of one of the martial art groups in Chinatown, because it made it difficult with the other members of the other martial art groups in the area.
Okay.
So it was bad in one way, but rather good in others. It meant that not only could I see and still practice Pak Mei with Master Tang and some of his students, but other doors were open as well, because nobody wanted to be left out. So I could do some Iron Ox. There was a very good teacher of Bamboo Forest Temple, Southern Praying Mantis,
Right.
and
Chuklam.
he had a very quiet, yeah, Chuklam, and he had a quiet, closed school that wasn't really open to foreigners. But I could quite happily walk in there because this was my area of work, and they were happy to see me, and I could sit with the teacher and have a cup of tea, and we could talk about different things and how techniques worked and history.
Wow.
There was a group of quite well known Wing Chun people there as well, so I could see and chat to them. There was a very strong group of just trying to think of an English name for it. Dragon Sign. Dragon Sign Kung Fu. So I used to see quite a few of their teachers, and one in particular, Li Fu Sao, who was a lovely guy. So I could speak and practice with him a little bit. So I got little bits of everything, but
Right.
couldn't get all of anything. I had to keep everybody relatively happy and nobody unhappy.
Well, it's a lot of
it
southern.
opened all the
It's a lot of
doors.
southern styles predominantly.
Yeah. At that time, it was mainly people from Hong Kong
Okay.
in Chinatown. There was a little bit of other stuff, but not a great deal. But because of the stuff I'd done in the past and in Manchester, and the Chinese New Year's that I'd done in Manchester, I got involved in organising Chinese New Year in London, which meant I could work with all the different groups, all the line dance teams, all the martial artists, and put on displays and the like. I even got to work with Jackie Chan once for his Rush Hour
Right.
film in 1998 or something like that. To my fun, standing with him in Leicester Square for photo shoots, for his calendars and that. It's quite
That's
quite
very
funny.
cool. That's very cool. Did any of your? I mean, this is gonna be a bit of a question. You can answer it if you want to or not. But there's always, to a certain degree, not all of them, but there are connections between a lot of the martial arts groups and the triads themselves. I mean, I experienced this in other countries as well, and I'm just wondering if what the situation was in London. Were there connections, or was it quite separate?
Yes, there were connections, but it's more so that people who were in certain gangs preferred certain classes,
Okay.
and vice versa. There weren't classes for gangs, but quite often you wouldn't. One group would prefer one teacher to another. So that's why I couldn't pick a side.
I see.
Basically. So anyway, I was going. It was all going really well, and then I had a terrible injury.
Oh.
I've had a few injuries throughout my service, but I had a really bad back injury. I split a disc in my spine and caused some damage to a L5S1 right at the bottom. Basically, I was. That's the easiest way to describe this. I was having trouble with several people. One of them was on the floor. And I was trying to remove them for their own safety. And while I was doing so, somebody grabbed my shoulders while I had the full weight of this person in my arms and twisted me. And practically everybody could hear the crack. And it really did me an awful lot of damage. I tried everything. I tried acupuncture. I tried all the people I knew who were good at medicine. I went to all of them. I went back to see my teacher in Manchester. He helped as much as he could. I just could not fix it. And the doctor said, right, you're going to have to build a metal frame around the base of your spine to hold it all together, because it's all damaged beyond repair. And it'll either be better or it'll be worse, about 50-50 chance they gave. And I was only young. This was 20 or so years ago, so I had plenty of service left. I thought, well, that's not good at all. And at that time, I'd been in Chinatown for a while, and there was an option for me to go and study a bit of language in China. So that was about 18 months in the future. So I thought, well, I'm going to China. I'd like to have a look at some different systems. And I found Jarek Szymanski's site,
Okay.
China from Inside.
Yeah.
And I read the interview of one of your uncles, Ma Chuansu.
Right.
And I was reading that and I thought, what is this? It was interesting. I'd seen something that purported to be Bagua many years previously, but I hadn't really seen anything much. And one of the sentences in that interview is, he says that people like Fan Fenlan, Guo Guming, and Gao Ziying had true kung fu.
Yeah.
So I'd heard of Guo Guming,
Yeah.
and I'd heard of Gao Ziying,
Yeah.
because at that time we had a gentleman who taught in the UK, Nigel Sutton, who'd actually studied with Gao Jiying for a short time in China, and is now actually Gao Jiying's son's disciple, and runs quite a big group here. Okay. But I'd never heard of Fan Fan. So I did a Google search and found very, very little about it, except for an interview that Jarek had done with one of her students, Wen Dasheng.
Right.
So I thought, I contacted Jarek and said, asked for some more information. Would it be possible to get contact details? And Jarek is a lovely man, and I thank him forever. Yeah, because he said, I will ring him, I will introduce you, and then if it's all right, I'll send you the details and you can write to him. So he did all that for me. Very, very helpful. I got the details, and with the help of one of our interpreters at my work, I wrote him a letter. And because there was no real way of getting hold of him any other way.
Right.
So WeChat wasn't available, and he didn't have a computer.
Yeah. So
I wrote to him, and so 3 or 4 weeks later, I got a fantastic letter back saying he'd love to see me. This is what tell me how long you're coming for. I'll tell you what I'll teach you. Bring a camera so that you can photograph it and do whatever, so you don't forget anything. I'm available between this time and this time, and I'll see you every day. I thought, well, absolutely fantastic.
Very nice.
So I got everything organized. Yeah, I got everything organized, and then just as we were getting ready, this was in 2003, and Feidian arrived. We had the first SARS. So everything closed down. I thought, oh, this isn't, I've made all these arrangements. So I wrote to her and said, I'm very sorry. If I can't come, I do apologise. But I would still like to come because the bit of language I was going to do was still available. I said, but I'd like to say hello and if that's okay. And I got a letter back. If you come, I will come and train you.
Wonderful.
So I thought, great, fantastic. So the night before I was going to go, I was working. And the night before I went, somebody helped me through a plate glass window, and I wasn't in that bad of shape. I was all right, but I wasn't in that bad of shape until that happened. And I thought, well, I don't feel too bad. But I woke up the next day ready to fly, and I couldn't stand, I couldn't walk, I couldn't lift my bag. I was in a right mess. I had to strap my back up with a weightlifting belt to hold me in one piece. And I needed help to get to the airport. The good thing was nobody was flying, so there was 3 of us going, and we had the whole of the first class to ourselves on Air China because there was nobody else on the plane. So luckily I had a nice place to sit, and I managed to get to Beijing in the summer of 2003, which was empty. And I stayed up in Haidian, up near BLCU, and I had a little place there. And I got there on the Saturday. I got acclimatized on the Sunday, did as much stretching as I could, but I was still in quite a bad way.
Was it your back that was acting up again?
Yeah, my back was just, it was, I thought it was finished, to be honest. I thought that was me.
Wow, and you still got on a plane?
Classes in them. Yeah, well, I couldn't ring him and say, I'm sorry, I can't come. I didn't want to let him down.
Yeah, I understand.
So on Monday, I managed to find the bus I needed to get to the east. He lives near Ditan Park.
Okay.
That's where his flat is. And I was staying in Haidian. So he found a little park about halfway, and he said, "I'll see you there on Monday morning." In his letter, "I'll cycle up there and I'll see you, so you don't have to travel as far."
That's very nice
Which I
of
thought
him.
was a really nice.
Yeah, that's
I
very
thought it was a really nice thing for him to do. So I said, "You'll recognise me as I'll be carrying a sword." I said, "Okay." So I get to the park. Everybody's got a sword, but luckily I'd seen his photograph on direct sight. So I said hello, and in my terrible, which hasn't got much better, I must admit, in my terrible Chinese language, I said, "It's lovely to meet you. I really hurt my back. It's as bad as it's ever been. I can hardly walk. I'll just have to be careful." And he went, "Great, okay, practice." So we did. Either he ignored me or he didn't understand. I would think he didn't understand, but
Okay.
he did probably ignore me. So we did. This was in the afternoon after class, and we did about 2.5 hours of basic stuff, a little bit of walking, showed me some bits and pieces, explained what we were going to do, gave me a letter saying he would see me at this time every afternoon. We would learn this. This section contains these. This is the names. A whole, almost like a booklet on what he intended to give me
Right.
while I was there, which I've never had before. And I thought, oh, okay. So I finished, said thank you. I said, I'll be here tomorrow, but I don't know what sort of state. Anyway, good, see you tomorrow. So I went back, got on the bus. Luckily, an old lady helped me off the bus when I got back to Haidian because I'd stiffened up and couldn't walk.
Oh, of course.
And then I went to bed on the hardest bed known to man, something made of concrete, Chinese mattress, and literally I could have cried. Nothing. I've never been in so much pain in my life.
Oh man.
I couldn't get any respite from it, so I went to class the next day. Just did a little bit of class. Couldn't lay him down. Went the next day, Tuesday. Did the same thing. By Thursday, I was getting better. I couldn't understand why, but my back was getting better. There was less pain. I was still getting pain from that mattress,
Right.
but actually my back was getting better. And by Friday, it was as good as it had been before I had before I'd gone through the window, which was not brilliant, but it wasn't bad.
Right.
So within a week, it was a lot better. So I decided then that what was holding me back the most was getting up and doing the classes in the morning, and that if I got up and did the training in the morning, that might make it a bit easier. So I asked him, would it be all right? On Friday, I asked him on Monday, would it be all right if I came on Monday morning? And he went, yes, no problem at all. We'll do Monday morning. So I said, I'll see you here at 8. So I turned up on Monday at 8 o'clock. We did from 8 till about 10:30. And I said, thank you very much. Expecting I'll see you Tuesday. And he went, right, I'll see you this afternoon. So he had decided that, well, if I can come in the morning, I can come in the morning and the afternoon. So I was there for 6 weeks. So for the first week I did once a day, and for the next 5 weeks I did twice a day, morning and afternoon.
Wow.
5 days a week. He let me have the weekend off. And after the second week, he gave me another letter saying, because you're doing extra time, we can cover this extra material. So I expect to get through this, and this. I expect you to learn this, and we'll get to that.
That's very meticulous of him, huh?
Yeah. I've never seen it before or since.
Yeah, no, that's
And
not common.
About 4 weeks in, we were getting a bit behind. So he said, what are you doing Tuesday and Thursday evenings? And I said, well, nothing. I said, okay, well, I'll see you in the park. So I got 2 more lessons to make sure that we finished what he had decided we were going to do. But by the sort of second and third week, my back was as good as it's ever been. And that was 18 years ago. And I have not had a single problem with it since.
So, again, I know what you do and what you studied with Master Wen, and it's Bagua. It's a particular style of Bagua, which is fun style Bagua.
Fun style.
So maybe you can give a little bit of an overview, because I know from my experience as well, not just myself, but other people too, and it's very hard for people to understand that haven't practiced this, but Bagua, just in the inherent way that it's practiced, does help you, I don't know, strengthen, recover, rejuvenate, and keep your back healthy. I mean, it's just within the nature of the twisting of the torso, etc. But I mean, that aside, maybe you could give a little bit of a overview on the style that you practice.
Right. Well, fan style comes from. Well, this is the history I've been given. Fan style comes from one of Dong Haituan's students, Fan Zhiyong.
Yeah.
Now, luckily, I've written the dates down, so I won't get them wrong. Fan Zhiyong was born in 1840, and he died in 1922. So he lived to 82 years old. He trained with Dong Haituan, and then somewhere around 1898, he went with another student of Dong Haituan, Lu Baojian, to Guoyong County in Hebei.
Okay.
And he stayed there for about 3 years. Now, I think I have been told that this was because he had an argument. It was either this is the reason, or while he was there, he had an argument with a bandit nicknamed Black Mule at a temple, a temple called Si Hong Temple.
Okay.
And he ended up killing this bandit. This was seen by his daughter, who at the time was 14 years old. So I think that's probably the reason he left and went with Lu Baojian to Guoyong County. And so he stayed there for 3 years. He passed on his Bagua to very few students. Now, this is because it was taught in a strange way.
All right.
You were taught one-to-one, and you were taught techniques first. So you would attack and he would defend, and then you would learn the defense to that attack, and then he would attack you and you would practice that defense, and then you would add more attacks and defenses. So you would learn techniques of attack and defense, all the practical applications before anything else.
Right.
And a section of Jibenggung, of basic exercises to build strength, speed and power, and stepping techniques. And that's, but because it was done like that, it's quite labor intensive. And so you can't show big groups. It was one-to-one.
Yeah. So
there was only 4 or 5 made of his people who got most of the information. And it was also such that they all got the information that fitted or suited them.
Okay.
So they didn't get techniques which required a slim, fast, accurate body, if they were a big lump of a person. They got techniques that fitted them. So there are several branches of fan style, and they all look different depending on which one of the students it's from. But they all contain the same information if you look at them as a whole. It's just the body shape of the people who were given it. Well, his daughter, Fan Lam.
Sorry, carry on. Sorry. I was going to say that's quite similar to, I mean, Dong Haituan himself. I mean, if we look at the story of how he taught each student according to their physical ability and their build, etc., working on their strengths as opposed to a one-size-fits-all kind of approach. And we can see just from the lines or the styles that came off from his students that is what defined them. They're different because he taught these people focusing on different ways. So it's very much in line, obviously, with the way he was taught.
Yeah, I mean, nobody was about when Dong Haituan was teaching, so nobody knows exactly what he taught. I'm of the opinion, and this is only my personal opinion, that he taught some stepping movements, circle walking, some hand positions, and some techniques, and an idea of how to use what you had in certain ways. I don't think there was, or if there was any, it was a very small amount of form work. It was all technique, I believe, and from that, people have produced their different styles of Bagua, all correct, all correct in their own way, because they were designed for that person, and it's an idea rather than a set thing. That's why some of the hand positions that you see in the basic palms are almost the same. But there are some variations. Maybe a hand's turned out rather than turned in. But each of the Bagua styles has the same hand positions, and then different ways of using them. So,
True.
But I don't think we'll ever know the real truth.
Yeah.
But Fan Zhang had I think it's 4 or 5 students at the most, I think, that had got anywhere with it. And he taught his daughter, Fan Fenlan. She was born in 1884 and she died in 1967.
Okay.
Fan Fenlan was also called Fan Dagu, anti-fan.
Yeah.
She was quite popular apparently in the 60s with some of the other older Bagua teachers, and she was well liked.
Yeah. And
that was a well liked nickname. The nickname for Fan Zhang was Fan the Madman.
I remember that. Yeah, Madman.
There's lots of different they say there's lots of different reasons for that. They say that he got red faced because he did a lot of qigong, and there was a lot of qigong in it. My teacher, Mr. Wen, says that his daughter said that it was because when he did the fast 4-direction 8-point stepping that we have in fan style, he looked like he was whirling in different directions like a dervish, like a whirling dervish.
Okay.
So looked mad because of his speed. But that's I'll get to that because it's part of our stepping.
Right.
But I'll say Fan Dagu because it's easy to say than Fan Fenlan. She taught my teacher, Wen Dasheng, who was born in 1947. She was another one who was quite a strict teacher. By the time she had started teaching the very few students she had, her and her father had put together the system as it basically is under Wen Dasheng now.
Oh, okay.
So that consists mainly of what we call the 8 big palms, which are 8 separate forms containing certain techniques.
Okay.
They are Tajang, which is collapsing palm, Zhuanjiang, which is knocking, Pi, chopping, Chuan, piercing, Zhuan, rotating, Huang, swaying, and then there's the final 2, which is Raoshen Jiang and Lian Huan Jiang, which is sort of body coiling and I think linked palm. I think you can translate it as. Yeah. So each of the main palm techniques, Ta, Zhuan, Pi, Chuan, and Huang, contain mostly that type of palm technique in the form. So Ta is a single-handed push, strike, or so all the techniques that use the single hand to push or strike or to lift or to press down, they're all in collapsing palm, interconnected with techniques from the other palms, but it's mainly Ta.
Okay.
Zhuang is a double palm push, where the hands come round in a circle and then push out. And any techniques that have the double pushing palm, whether it's pushing forward or lifting up together or pushing out together, are in knocking. Chuan is a lot of the piercing techniques are in that. It requires you to be quick, agile, and fast with in and out piercing techniques. P is like a swaying, almost like Tong Bei in its swaying arms. Yeah. The arms swing in and out. And Huang is done much more like a Tai Chi form, much slower, but it's to get the body to completely sway and to get used to pressing lightly and lifting lightly. It's a much slower form. And Zhuan is the only form that we do that is completely on a circle.
Right.
All the other forms have circles in them, but the rotating palm is the only one completely on a circle, which looks like all the others. All the other forms have circles in them, usually at the start and sometimes in the middle, but their main stepping method is what we call Sanjiao Bu, triangular
step,
or or Dasamian, striking on four sides, stepping on it in 8 directions, and we also do a 9 palace piercing step, which is around 9 posts, which is how the linked palm is done. But so the main stepping for fan style is that triangular step, 4 sides, 8 directions. That's where he got his name, Fan the Madman, from the combination of all those different palms darting in and out from people stepping backwards and forwards and in different directions quickly, changing direction.
Very interesting. And
so that it's an awful lot. It's an awful lot of information because each of those forms are 30 or 40 moves long. They're all as big as a normal Bagua form. But Wen Dasheng told me that one of the reasons it was done like that is that you would learn something called Dan Tao, which is basic techniques in a straight line. 8 techniques just to get you used to walking in a straight line and using basic techniques, and the real just pushes and punches and twists and turns, nothing major. And then there was an old version of rotating palm, which is called Lao Ba Shi, old 8 palms, which although is on a circle, you don't turn using Kobo or Bible. There's none of that in it. So it turns suddenly without taking that turning step.
So it pivots on the spot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rather than taking a step and turning. That was the original way of our rotating palm. The new, I'll explain why we actually have it now in Zhang in a short while. So in the other rotating palm, we now have that because it was put in by Wen Dasheng later on. So we still have the original stepping techniques. All the original stepping techniques are there, but for rotating, he added something that he learnt at the behest of his teacher, who said it would be a good idea to add this other stepping as an extra fiddle to his bow, really.
Okay.
But what they did was you'd learn your basic palms. You'd learn something called it's walking in the figure of 8, which is a figure 8 walking palm with 8 different palms. Looks very much like an old 8 palm form with a change of direction in the middle. You'd learn that, and then you'd learn one of the big palms that fitted you.
Oh, okay. I see.
Ta and Drang, you need it. Ta and Drang, you need to be quite big and strong. It's better if you're big and strong. Chuan, thin and quick, because there's a lot of very low, darting down low techniques in it, which require you to be a little bit thinner than I am, and quick. I'm heavy built, let's say, so Ta and Drang fit me, whereas Chuan does not.
Right.
Huang is done if you're a little older, or you've got some injuries, or you'll learn something you'll learn later on to help you when you get older, because it helps to open up your hips more and protects the knees and helps with the back and getting other things. I have never actually seen Rao Shendrang and Lian Huan. Oh, I know I have seen Lian Huan Dang. I've recently learned that. But the stepping on the linked palm is around 9 points.
Okay.
Now you quite often see a line of 3 posts, 3 lines of 3 posts.
Yeah, the 9 palaces.
And you walk around them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's our 9 palaces is 1 in the middle and 8 in a circle around it.
Okay.
And you work in and out between those and around the middle one. And there's a set of techniques that come from all the different palms that you work in and out of that. It's not often taught and it's not often practiced because it needs quite a bit of room.
Yeah.
You can do it around numbers and things, but it's not as easy as some of the others to do.
Okay.
So On top of that, there is lots and lots and lots more. There's a lot of Neigong and Qigong exercises,
Right.
some for health, some for strength. There's grabbing techniques, 72 linking grabbing forms. There's a strange circle form which is done with a fist, where you each change ends in a spinning back fist, low cross leg stance.
Oh, okay.
There's a kick. There's a short. Yeah, there's an 8 short kicking form. There's a one's called Heaven and Earth Palm, which is a straight line up and down, like the 64 palms.
Okay, yeah,
but
that
up
we
and
practice,
down.
yeah.
Various different, which has all the different palms used in different directions in it, interconnected. So.
And weapons, I'm sure, as well.
But yeah, lots. There's a lot. Unfortunately, there's quite a lot of weapons. There's the normal. Big knife.
Okay.
There's the small knife, the dando. There's the normal long straight sword that you have in Bagua. And we have a short sword one as well. We have deer horn knives, double-ended spear, long spear, stick, walking stick, guai.
Okay.
Then there's 2 that I would really like to learn, but I haven't, which are double meteor hammers.
Oh, okay.
And there's a double. I think the English is sweepers, xiao zigun.
Okay, those giant sweepers.
Stick, yeah, but they're a bit smaller, double-handed too. So there's quite a variety there.
Just quickly, you mentioned the meteor hammers. They have shorter ropes on them, don't they?
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I may have misspoken. I'm talking about hammers, as in handles with a big.
Oh, mace, like okay, sure, yes,
like a mace, like, not the fine ones. I know somebody did learn them a long time ago.
Yeah.
But he hasn't taught them since that, because they are very difficult, and he didn't make it any easier by making his out of concrete. So they're really, really heavy. He filled a football with concrete and stuck a stick in it, and then cut and so they're a hell of a weight.
I'm sure.
But yeah, so Wen Dasheng, he practiced with Fandagu from 1940, from when the age was about 14, every day except for 3 days over Chinese New Year.
Wow.
So he practiced in the morning with her, before school and then before work as he got older, and in the evenings except for 3 days over Chinese New Year. She was a very strict teacher. But for some reason, even he doesn't know, she really liked him. She realised that she was getting on, and she wanted to pass as much as she could on. So she taught him relatively quickly, and also got him to speak to other people. And she would be visited regularly by Teng Youxin, Tin Tinghua's son, and Wo Guming. They would regularly visit her and have tea, and while he was training, and they would shout up, how about this and how about that. So nearing the end of her life, she said to him that you should go and spend some time with Teng Youxin, and look at their walking methods, look at how they walk, look at their Bible and Kobo. So once a week he'd go to Dongdan Park and study the Cheng walking with Teng Youxin.
Okay.
And while he was there, he also met another Cheng stylist there, who he became friendly with, Wang Rongtang.
Okay.
Who was another one that comes from Cheng style. So that's the reason that we now have some of that circle walking in our system as well, because it's come from Cheng Youxin, and was added to our rotating palm. We still do the original La Bache the old way, but Drunken we now do that way with that in it as well. I think that's mainly because, especially the youngsters who want to go into competition,
I'm sure
it makes it, they prefer that in the competitions.
Well, it's unfortunate because that's unfortunately what they think Bagua is. So in terms of competition, so if you don't do it like that, they're like, well, that's not Bagua, but it's just not really the truth. But it is what it is. We're in this situation now.
Yeah.
So it's understandable.
To do it the old way he used to do it is incredibly difficult. It's only a short step. All the pressure comes from your back heel.
Yeah.
So your step is only short. You sink as far as you can sink on that back heel. The foot can't go very far because you've got to keep the pressure on the back heel, and then you push through the back heel. It is really very demanding way of walking, and you can only do it slowly. Teacher Wen only likes you to do this if you can for 20 to 30 minutes a day, and that is really pushing it. It's not that easy. So especially the youngsters, they much prefer a much prettier and easier and more flowing way of walking.
Sure.
So that's unfortunately why I'm one of the very few who still practice La Bache.
Do you guys, well, now that you've got for that, you said it's for Zhuangzhang that you guys do the Cheng style stepping methods, correct?
Yeah.
Do you do Tangni? Do you actually do mud wading with a sliding step, a friction step?
No. We don't go that far. No.
Okay.
From what Wen Dasheng told me, Cheng Sin didn't step that far.
Okay, but there is the slide though, a little bit. Is there a bit of a
his student Cheng Sin, because Cheng Sin used to take Sun Zhiyun to my to Fan Lang when he went to visit on several occasions, and Sun has an incredibly long step, or had an incredibly long step.
Yes.
Cheng had a much shorter one. It moved a bit, but it was nothing in comparison. It's a huge increase in distance travelled. So he was never shown that far a step. Mm-hmm. That much less rubbing of the foot. But while when Fan Fan died, which was December '67, Mr. Wen carried on. She was married to a man called Wang Zhe, who was born in 1880 and died in 1970, so he'd been 90.
Yeah.
Well, Wang Zhe was also a student of Fan Zhiyong.
Oh, interesting.
And his son-in-law. So he continued teaching Wen Dasheng, but he was a rough, strong man. Fan Fan Lang and Wang Zhe were farmers up until their deaths. They were farmers. So they were big, they were strong, active, out constantly digging. They were strong people. Wang Zhe liked seizing grabbing techniques, and he liked something called Jingang Bashi, which is a power and strength developing set of 8 exercises in a straight line.
Yeah.
To get a whipping technique in the trunk, and to get strength in the palms and in the fists. He was apparently a very strong guy all the way to the end, and was apparently a lot nicer than Fandagu to his students. So he learned from him. Fan Fan also had a daughter, and she also helped in the early years with the extra bits and pieces. He was also very friendly with Guoyong.
Yes.
Who used to visit Fan, and he tells a story that around the Cultural Revolution time, Guoyong was a professional martial arts instructor,
Yeah.
So that his job sort of almost ceased to exist as the Cultural Revolution came in. Life was a little hard for him. Now, Mr. Wen had a neighbour who was a student of Guogu Ming's, and to help, they managed to get a few people together to have private lessons. And at that time, Mr. Wen lived in a quite a private little courtyard. So, and the people who lived there were good people. So Guogu Ming could come there and teach these few students and make a little bit of a living for the last couple of years of his life. Because he died in somewhere like 68, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
So at that time, and because Wen Dasheng had helped him, they like to chatted about quite a few things. Wen Dasheng has told me that Guogu Ming explained a lot to him about things, whereas Fan Fan could show you, but if you asked a technical question or a theory question, it was a little hard for her to give you the right answer or explain certain things. Guogu Ming, because he'd been a professional teacher, he could explain things in different ways. So there was quite he liked Guogu Ming very much, and he helped him make sense of some of the things that she'd told him and some of the things that she'd written down for him, and they helped each other quite a bit in the end. In the sort of late mid-60s. There was also another student of Fang Zhuyong who lived in Beijing, Shi Qingsheng, who died 68, 69. And he was and Fan Dagu told Mr. Wen he should go and see him and chat to him about things as well to get another sense of what her father was like. Yeah, another sense of what he'd do. And so he used to go and visit him quite regularly. And Shi's got a student. I still think he's alive. I haven't heard that he's passed. A man called Han Jie. He was in his late 80s.
Wow.
A couple of years ago when I last saw him, but I haven't heard that he's gone. So there must be something about this Bagua, because they all seem to be. Yeah. All seem to last quite a while.
They do.
Considering the pressure throughout their lives they must have had.
Oh, definitely.
Because he was teaching in Temple of Heaven last time I heard.
Okay.
But Fanjia is still going. And I say he was quite. Wen Dasheng was quite friendly with Gao Ziying and his son Gao Jiwu, and would often see Li Ziming. We were quite friendly together as well.
Yeah.
So he was lucky in some respects because of his teacher allowing him to openly go and see other people and be respectful and show some things to people. Lots of doors were open for him. One of his favourite people that he used to like to speak to was a yin stylist, Yang Kun.
Oh, okay.
He said that he was a very friendly man. He said he was very austere when it came to his training, but he used to like to chat about the old days when he was young, and he used to like to chat about the old teachers that he used to meet. So he learned a lot of stories and how different teachers, second generation teachers used to teach and what they used to teach, and more about the what was the same. The more he talked to the older teachers, the more he realised that there was more common than there was non-common in the Bagua systems.
I'm sure
it's very much one family with just different ways, like a mountain, just all different ways to the same peak.
Yeah. It's very interesting because some of the things you've said, I mean, they resonate with some of the things in my Liang system. Now, I do know that Guogu Min and even Li Ziming incorporated stuff from other systems into what is now called Liang style. So, for example, one of the basic things that my teacher teaches is also called Dan Cao Ba Shi, which is different exercises, they're not done walking in circles. They're just 8 different exercises, most of them being in a straight fashion, which are basic things that you start to practice before you move on to it and onto other aspects. And even the name that you mentioned, Dancao Basha, it's exactly the same. And other aspects as well, like the straight line perspective, the triangular stepping, etc. It's very similar. We have something that it's a routine in our system called Bamian which is 8 directions palm. That's the translation. Bamian, just 8 directions, and it's quite interesting because you do walk in a circle, but literally the circle walking is more like a formality before you do each one of these lines. So there's 8 separate little lines, and instead of going in through or in towards the center, they go out. And I'm not quite sure if those were something that were originally in Liang Zhenpu's system or were absorbed by Guogumin or others that came from other systems, possibly Fan, because it is quite different to the other content. So yeah.
Yeah, there's quite a bit. There's quite a bit I have never seen in Fan style. When I started in 2003, and he was really nice to me, and I will never leave him because he has been really, really nice to me, and he's always open to anything I say, anything I ask, anything I would like to, I ask of him. He can't be more helpful.
Yeah.
But after a few years, and I'd learnt a lot. I was going 3 times a year for a month at a time.
Yeah.
And all I was doing is training morning and afternoon. I wasn't doing anything else. I was training morning and afternoon. And in fact, after the first time, I trained morning and afternoon, Monday to Friday. And then on Saturday, I'd go to his other class. So 6 days a week I was training.
Yeah.
And just except for that, lying down and eating were the only other 2 things I'd do while I was in Beijing. I learned a great deal. I learned a great deal relatively quickly, and not to say a bad word, I was becoming a forms whore. Like, just honestly, it was getting out of hand. And then all of a sudden, one day, he said to me, at the end of, I just learnt something. I can't even remember what it was I'd learnt now. He said, "That's it. I've taught you everything I know."
Wow.
You can cut. You're still welcome to come anytime you like, but I've taught you everything I know. Everything else that's on the list that I gave you in the past, it's been lost. She died before I could get it all, and things have gone. I thought, oh, well, that's a shame, but I've got quite a lot. And I said, well, would you mind me still coming? He said, no, you can come once a year if you want, and we'll just do some checks. And I said, well, if it's all right with you, I'd still like to come at least 2 or 3 times a year if I can, because I really enjoy training there. It's a special place. If that's okay, if you've got the time, I would really like to come. And he went, yes, fine. If you want to come, you can come. You don't have to. So for 2 years, I came. I still went 3 times both years. So that's 6 times. That's 6 months of training.
Yeah.
And we just did basics, and we fiddled with little bits and pieces, and we changed. I wasn't walking. My hands weren't in the right place. I'd got the wrong idea because I'd been rushing. I'd got the wrong idea about things. And then the 3rd year, I came back there ready to do my practice again, and he gave me another letter. This time we're going to learn this. I thought you said we'd done it all, but I didn't say anything. I just carried on. So from then on, every time I went, I got a whole thing, because he never likes to teach anything by half. He wants to complete it. Mm-hmm. If you're not there long enough to complete it, he won't teach it.
Oh.
Because he doesn't want it. He doesn't want half of it, and you not either be able to get back or anything happen to him, and you only be stuck with half of something.
True.
So if he's going to teach it, he wants to teach it all. So I'd get there, I'd learn something. The next time we'd go through it again and do some revisions, or just make sure, and we'd revise some other bits. That carried on for another 2 or 3 years, and then one of his old students turned up from the old days, who'd been living in Canada.
Oh wow!
So he spoke perfect English. My Chinese is rubbish, and is only getting worse. However hard I try, it just gets worse. I understand what Mr. Wen says somehow, and I can converse with him. But if a member of the public asks me what the weather's like, I can't answer it. I don't know what you're saying. I don't quite understand why, but I can understand what he's talking about when we're talking about training.
But I recall when we ate together, you quite understood what the waitress was saying when she came to our table a few times.
That's food, though. You see, I'm a man who weighs 250 pounds. I can talk about food, but he said, "Oh, we're going to go for lunch." I said, "Okay." So me, Mr. Wen, and this lad he's older than me, went to lunch. And Mr. Wen said, through him, so that I fully understand, "I intend to teach you everything, but it's a little difficult. Mr. Wen's wife isn't very well. She went blind due to diabetes, so he's her carer. So he still comes out and teaches me every day, 1-to-1. But he wanted to do more, and he can't. He said he had to slow down. But his intention is to teach me everything. So there's some weapons, so double straight sword, double broadsword, these hammers. He wants to teach me all, but it's going to be longer than he expected because of that." He said he has told people before that they've learnt everything. They're still willing. He's still willing to see them for corrections, but he has nothing else for them. And I was the only person to come back.
Oh, okay. So it was kind of like a test.
Well, no, you could see that I'd lost my way. I'd lost sight. As I say, I often tell. I've got a few students, and I tell them that Bagua is a mountain, and whichever type of Bagua you're doing, you're starting at the bottom at one part around that mountain, but you're all looking at the same peak. You're all going to the top. What happened? What I was doing is I got about halfway, and then I was running around it. I wasn't going up.
Oh, I see.
I was just getting more and more. I wasn't. Nobody can get perfection, but you look for progress.
Yeah.
And I'd stopped. I was just grabbing. I want this. I see that new thing. I want that new thing. And what I had wasn't right. It was rightish, but it wasn't. I wasn't giving it the reverence it required.
I see.
Because I'd read quite a lot by then on how you should stand, where your arm should be, what you should be, turn this, turn that. And he explained to me that when you walk in the circle, the most important thing is where both your hands are.
Yeah.
If your hands and your elbows are in the right place, everything else, your torso and everything, is right. So concentrating on the torso and not concentrating on the hands, you lose it. So there was things that were simple things that I wasn't doing well. The Ji Bengal No wasn't doing well, and I needed to stop. And if I'd have stopped and gone, well, I know everything and that's it, it would have been my mistake.
Yeah.
But I realised that I wasn't. What I had wasn't polished. It needed polishing. It's still not polished.
It needs polishing forever.
I
think you've got the right attitude, because this is something that I've been trying to tell people that I talk to about. It's like, when do you know everything? You never actually. You might know content, but you polish it forever. You stop polishing it when you stop breathing. There's always stuff to improve. Yeah.
Well, he often says middle, which is very similar to what my Hunggar teacher, Master Chu, used to say. It's the middle path. Take the middle path. Not too much, not too little. Just. And if you think, today I'm tired, I'm a bit sore, I'll do what is middle for me, that is good. You never say, I'm tired, I'm sore, I won't do anything.
Exactly.
And you never say, I'm tired, I'm sore, and I'm really going to push through it. Neither of those things are any good.
Exactly.
If you just keep through the middle path, you will always be. That's why we don't go, you have to be this height when you're walking. We go, this is the position you should be in. Now sit to where you're comfortable. There you go.
Yeah.
So some days your technique might be higher or lower, but it's what it is for you. And eventually you'll make progress.
Yeah.
But I mean, I really like Liang style Bagua. I mean, some of the people in Liang style, I've met your teacher.
Yeah.
Andrea introduced me, and he's a lovely man.
Yeah.
And like a lot of the good traditional teachers that I've met in China, you speak to them for a little while, and the next thing, oh, I'll show you this.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, let's have a look at that. A lot of them, I really like Zhao Daoyuan.
Yeah.
I've spoken to him and spent quite a lot of time with him, and he's a lovely man. I've met Wang Tong quite a few times. He can be a bit grumpy.
Yeah.
But he seems to have warmed a little bit since he saw me with Zhao Daoyuan. And Li Ziming's daughter is a lovely lady.
Yeah. Li Xuren.
Li Xuren.
Yeah.
All these people that I've met have all been open, have been kind. They all seem to know each other, and there's no animosity. There's no ego. It's a totally different situation to other martial arts situations I've been in. They are the Bagua community in Beijing is especially the older teachers. They're a resource that we're going to sorely miss when they're gone.
Well, I mean, I tell you, my teacher, I don't recall when we last saw each other, but it was probably, Andrea was here. So my teacher was still here, and he was just about to go to Australia to visit his daughter. And that was around December. What are we in? 2019 December. And then he was going to be there and come back either just before or just after Chinese New Year. So it was a few months that he was going to go down and see his daughter in Australia. And then we had COVID. So he's been stuck there. And hasn't been able to return since then. And it's really hard. I mean, it's hard for him, but it's hard for me too, because you know what it's like. You know, I mean, you've met him, you have your teacher here. It's just not the same to know that, you know, I mean, they're stuck out there. We can't see each other. God knows when it'll be safe to travel either way. He's also old, so I don't want to push him to risk anything, you know, with this virus, etc. So it's very hard, and it's like you say. I mean, this generation, we're gonna miss them tremendously when they're gone, because, I mean, honestly speaking, there isn't much of a next generation. I hate to be frank and I hate to be honest about that, but there really isn't. I mean, there really isn't. The people that were training with my teacher, there's not many people that seriously train continuously for such a long time. I don't know what's going to happen with the next generation. I really don't. It's difficult.
Well, there's a set of training that you basic training you do in fun style. Most things have standing pole techniques. But very few people in my group do them.
Yeah.
But there's shoulder striking. We used to do a lot of shoulder striking. You know, of barging shoulders.
Yeah.
Long spear shaking. The old use of a long spear. Lanada, 50 times each side, and the pressing. We still have, we used to have, I still do it, but I think I'm the only one. We still do some sandbag work, both striking and grabbing. And we do jar carrying for the grabbing techniques, for the linking grabbing, 72 linking grabbing form, because you need strength in your fingers. Most people don't do any of that anymore. When I first met some of his older students, this was 2000 and 2003, 2004. They were out in the parks doing long spear work, doing jar carrying. They were doing shoulder striking, doing all that. You still see the shoulder striking in the wrestling in the Sui Jiao.
Yeah.
but you just don't see it in quite a lot of the other groups that used to do it. Because I used to, because one of the training places was Ditan Park. There's a lot, or there were a lot. It's not as many now. A lot of fantastic martial artists in Ditan Park. I was like a kid in a sweet shop. I used to go early, hoping that I'd walk into Feng Chang, because I used to like to push hands with him, because that's where he used to practice. So 2 or 3 days a week, I'd get a little push hand go with him. And
wow, that's an experience.
He was fantastic.
Yeah, he really is. He really was. Yeah.
It's just that's the sort of people that you watch in films. You know, that you think they got some special magic. He used to tell me where he was going to send me. You know, I'm going to send you over here. Okay. And just, but there are less and less of them.
No, there definitely are less and less.
And it's a crying shame, because there is plenty of skill. Recently there's been a lot of things about traditional Chinese martial arts not being able to fight, and this and the you see old Siu fighting. And I know you've met Siu before. Yeah. I've met him a couple of times, because his favourite referee is Wang Tongqing, who's the wrestler who's one of my Bagua brothers.
Okay.
Learns Bagua off Mr. Wen. So, but I am always an advocate of traditional Chinese martial art. If it's a traditional art, taught traditionally, and you practice traditionally, if at the end you can't fight, it's your fault.
Exactly.
It's not the art. It's you.
Exactly.
If the art's lasted 200 years, then 200 years ago, you could use it, because it was life and death 200 years ago. So if you're taught correctly and you practice correctly and you can't do it, it's your fault.
I've had so many people sit and try to talk to me. Oh, you know, I mean, people that aren't deeply trained, that haven't gone deep through a Chinese martial arts system, haven't spent the time to deeply absorb, digest, and develop a skill. Learn from a teacher who's actually qualified, who's taught them correctly, and they've practiced correctly. But those same people will sit and say, "Hey, I've got an idea on how to fix Chinese martial arts," and I sit and look at these people. And I'm like, "But from which perspective are you talking? Because you yourself have no place to talk. It's like you're going to tell me about how to fly a plane, and you don't even know how to fly a plane. You've never even been in a cockpit before, but you're going to tell somebody how to fly it better. It's just absurd, the discussions that are happening today about these arts, you know? And it's exactly as you've said. Like, yes, it requires a serious amount of training. It requires a serious amount of dedication. It requires a teacher who's seriously skilled, and for sure these things work. The problem is that is rare today. That is the problem. So
yeah, and people, I mean, you spoke to another English lad. Is it James?
Oh, James Cars. Yes, he does Yiquan.
Yeah. Now I'm yet to meet him, although I really would like to, and hopefully, if we're ever allowed to leave our houses in the UK, I'll get to see him. But you know, that's a traditionally trained man, trained in a traditional art. But he's willing to get in the ring and get punched in the face. Yeah. So if when I did Thai boxing, Master Sken said to me, "Only those who love the art will be any good." So you can be fantastic on the bag, you can be fantastic in the gym, but if you're not willing and happy to be kicked and punched for 20 minutes, you'll be no good.
For sure.
And that it's not the art's no good, it's that the people who do the art are no good, because they're not the fighters that they used to be, which is understandable. If you like fighting and you like a bit of rough and tumble, then you'll join a boxing club or you'll join a BJJ club, and you'll have some rough and tumble because that's what you like. If you don't like that sort of thing but want to do martial arts, you'll go somewhere where they don't do that. So what happens is you get martial arts clubs that are full of people who think they're learning to fight, but really don't want to fight.
They like the idea.
Because they don't like the idea of, but as soon as you, what did Tyson say? I met Tyson many, many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, if you taught him origami, he'd kill you with it. He came, I think it was 86. It was either 86 or 87, and he came to the UK to box. He had a world championship boxing. I can't remember which year it was now. And I worked in the area. I was in the police then, and we had a boxing club, and we did boxing for charities and things. And we knew the head of security at the hotel he was staying at, and we asked them, well, when next time you see their security, can you see if you can get these boxing gloves signed for us, and we'll auction them off for charity.
Wow.
And they called us one night and said, yeah, we've got those gloves. And we came in, they took us upstairs, and there he was, and he signed them in front of us. And honestly, my God, you just had to look at you. He was in the peak of his fighting time.
Wow.
And he just oozed aggression.
Yeah.
You wouldn't fight him in the street.
No, you'd have to be mad.
He produced fear. At that time, there was a door supervisor, or bouncer as they used to be called Lenny McLean, who used to work at the Hippodrome nightclub. And I used to see him at the weekends because I used to work nights in that area. And he was very well known as a bare knuckle boxer and was a mountain of a man. But people used to think, oh, I'll have a go with him. And he always used to have two other supervisors with him. And I said, is that to help out? And it said, no, we're here to stop him before he hurts somebody. Mm-hmm. Because he was a nice man. I really liked him. But if the aggression was required, his problem was stopping.
I see.
Yeah, so it didn't matter what you taught him. You could teach him anything, and he'd hurt you with it.
Yeah.
Because he was someone, the best fighters I've ever met, not in the ring, but real fighters, people who fight on the street, who are relatively well known in certain gangs for their ability. It's nothing. All it is, it's about not being worried about the consequences of your action.
Right. If
you don't care about the consequences of your action, you're almost unbeatable, because you'll do things that most people wouldn't do to another human being, and that'll beat you. Yeah. So that's the thing.
Tyson, I've read. I don't know if you've read his. It's not an autobiography, but his biography that somebody wrote. It's called Undisputed Truth. I don't know if you've read it. It's a fantastic book, and it's him telling his life story, which is full of tragedy and hardship, and but you really get into his psyche, especially at that time that you were mentioning when he was at his peak. And I mean, he lived and breathed basically being the dominator of mankind. I mean, that was literally his psyche, whether it be physically, whether it be violently, whether it be financially or sexually. I hate to say that, but that's what he oozed in that period. He was literally, and his psychology was that he was the dominator of mankind, and I'm sure that you saw that when you were in the same room with him.
Oh yeah, you could tell. Nothing frightened him.
Yeah.
Nothing frightened him. And in most cases, you come up against somebody like that, and you've already lost.
Yeah, exactly.
But people like that are not practicing traditional Chinese martial arts anymore.
Yeah.
But if they were, they would show how good traditional Chinese martial arts are.
Yeah.
It's not the art; it's the people who are practicing now. We're the students. I put myself there. I don't like fighting. I've had hundreds of fights in my time. You just need to make one slight mistake and there is tragedy.
Yeah.
And I've been hurt really badly on more than one occasions and not really expected it. And I will be the first to put my hand up and saying I'm not good at fighting. But in the good old days when you used to hear these stories about how good these arts were, these people were good at fighting.
Yeah.
but they'd have been good at fighting whatever art they taught. So it's not the art, it's the people. We need people who are good at who want to be good at fighting to learn them, and then we'll have good fighters who've learned them.
Sure.
But,
Sure.
I can't leave the house at the moment, so that's unlikely.
Yeah, well, we're fighting something else at the moment. How widespread is fun style? I mean, outside of China, you mentioned that Master Wen had a student in Canada. Did he manage to teach anybody there? I mean, it's not well known in reality outside of China. Yeah.
No. The Canadian guy, he's back and forwards between Canada and Beijing again now, but he's slightly older than me. But he was very good when he was a youngster. But he hasn't. He lost contact with Mr. Wen. Mr. Wen used to live near the Workers' Stadium. He was in the block next to where Cher Petit used to live, and they used to train in the sort of bicycle sheds outside there. And just round the corner is where Cher Petit used to teach.
Right.
And then so that's where he learnt with Mr. Wen. And then Mr. Wen, he went to Canada, and Mr. Wen moved up to near Ditan, and they lost contact. And it was only through the internet actually that he found him again, sort of some 30 years later.
Wow.
But there is a group outside Beijing, and I cannot remember for the life of me where it is now, but still in China, who come from another student of the originator, but not through Fan Dagu.
Okay.
There is Han Jie. Somebody who trained with Han Jie was in London. A Chinese medicine guy was in London, but from what I can tell, didn't teach any. He did Shaolin and various other things as well, so didn't teach much fan style, if any.
Yeah.
There is no. I think it's just me.
Yeah.
When I went in 2003, I went in the summer. I really enjoyed it. I said I hope to see you again, and I came back home, and I said I want to go back, and I have a little bit of a non-meeting of minds with my beloved about. I've just been away for 7 weeks, and I wanted to go back, and it was not happening. And I went miserably back to work, and the week after, work came to me and said, we've got a really big problem. We need to send you to Fujian for 10 days because I was dealing with something and I had to go to Fujian. And so you got to fly into Beijing, then you got to go to Fujian. So I say, well, if I can get some leave, could I go to Beijing early? I said, as long as you're in Beijing to take the flight to Fujian, you can do what you like. So I'm okay. So that was in November. I got back at the end of August, was back in Beijing in November. So I had 3 weeks before I had to go to Fujian. I did 10 days in Fujian, then I went back to Beijing. So I went back to see him almost within a couple of months. And after that, I was very smitten, and I couldn't stop coming.
Yeah.
So it was so I came sort of March, June, July, and then I tried September, which is the best, but it just became so expensive. I had to go in end of October, November, after Golden Week.
Yeah.
When the prices drop.
Are you at liberty to speak about the thing you had to do in Fujian?
Oh, it was to do with human trafficking.
Oh, okay. Because that must have been some international thing between England and Fujian if they sent you over there. I mean,
well, I've since being very young, I've always spent a lot of my time with Chinese communities. In Manchester, I did, and I helped out with New Year. And in London, I did, and the London Chamber of Commerce needed some help with problems they were having. And the embassy understood those problems and there was an offer to go and have a look at certain things and help out and get a feel for. We were getting a lot of people sliding in, let's say, from China, and they were mainly coming from Fujian.
Okay.
They're coming in backs of lorries, and it was quite dangerous. It was after that we had problem. We had the deaths in the back of a lorry.
Oh, I do remember that.
So we were trying to find ways of explaining to people that it wasn't actually as good as they thought it was, and it was a very difficult and perilous journey, and maybe some ways of making it an easier and more visa-friendly way of coming.
Right.
Rather than paying snakeheads, criminal gangs to do it. And I got vouched for. So I was lucky enough to be vouched for, and I turned up, and it was very difficult. The first day was very difficult. And then we had an evening meal where they plied me incredibly with huge amounts of alcohol. Mm-hmm. Which is strange because I don't drink. As a rule, I don't drink alcohol. So I only drink in China. I don't drink in the UK. And you've probably seen it in business and other things. They ply with alcohol to see what you really are like, what the real person is like. So they get you as drunk as you possibly can be, and then they see and then they prod you to see what happens. Right. But I had a lot of knowledge about customs and about Chinese and about other things, and I knew quite a bit about Fujian, and I knew a few people in Fujian, and some of the people that I'd worked with and helped out because they were victims of crime in the UK, their families were over there, and I got a few people who vouched for me. And after that night, I think everything I wanted. If I wanted to go somewhere, I could go.
Wow,
if I wanted to see somebody, I could. I sat at a table and we ate things that most people would.
Yeah, for sure. Down there,
they gave everything they could find that they thought I wouldn't eat, and I'll eat anything. I'm from the north.
Yeah.
Put on the table. Well, there they go. But I do remember having prawns, drunken prawns, 3 little prawns in a little sauce. And I'm chatting away to somebody, and they're going, "Eat your prawns." I go, "Oh, yes, in a minute." And I looked down, and they were starting to move, so they were live, and the alcohol had just stunned them. And we were going, but because they felt comfortable with me, it made life easier. It's the same with the martial arts community. If they feel comfortable, once people feel comfortable with you, they can't do enough for you.
Yeah.
They really can't.
Yeah.
I did some Sui Jiao because Wen Dasheng says my brother, and they have a group on a Saturday and a Sunday in Ditan Park. Right. So I do my practice, and we put round, and we go and see them. And Li Baoru was there at the time, and some of his students were fighting, and they went, there's a hefty looking foreigner, we'll have him. So they put a jacket on me, and this young, extremely fit and fast lad was showing me the error of my ways, because it's they just dig a pit and rake it over, and all that does is basically bring the stones to the top, and they don't cover it with anything. It's like solid hard ground. It's a horrible thing to fall on. So he'd had me. I mean, I'd done bits and pieces, and I knew some throws, and there's throws in Bagua, and I'm big. I'm saying I weighed the best part of 250 pounds. Yeah. And so I was holding my own just, but he kept having me over, and he'd had me over twice, and it was like 3 or 4 goes, and then they let the foreigner rest. So Li Baoru came over, and he came to me. He said, "Right, yeah." He was talking to me too quickly. He said, "I'm sorry, he's young. He's too quick." And he said to me, "He's getting slower, but you're still fat." And I thought, cheeky. I thought, but he's right. I thought he's right. He's right. He was getting slower, but I still had the size. And so I went to, and after that, he couldn't. I finished him.
Okay.
He couldn't throw me after that.
Good.
It was Lee Baru's student. It was fighting.
He's such a friendly guy.
Yeah, he's such a lovely man. Really lovely man. But he was right in what he said. He said, I was too busy thinking about, I've got to catch it now. My source of strength was that I was twice his weight, and all I had to do was wait until he got a little tireder, and then there was nothing he could do.
Yeah.
So in a few words, he had a good look. But I always liked him. He's still going. I always like Master Guoyong as well. He was a lovely man. But let's say they're another group, open. I went to a big opening of a martial gym, and they were there. And that ended up in people having a little wrestle.
Of course.
They moved the tables to the side of the restaurant, have a little wrestle. Yeah, and every now and again somebody would walk past me and go, how much do you weigh? Right, okay, we've got a big one here. We've got a big one here. Come on. Yeah, but you'd know that there's no... It wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen anywhere else. People have too much ego and they're too worried about losing face.
Yeah.
There, it's a totally different place.
Totally.
It's how martial arts should be. Everybody's open. If you are open, they're open, and you can learn from most people.
Yeah.
I miss it terribly.
Well,
I'm depressing myself.
Hopefully things get somewhat stabilized in the next few months, and both in the UK and here, and you can come back and see your teacher, and we can get together. I saw your teacher the last time was at Zhao Daiyuan. He was getting he was accepting some disciples, and I was there with my master.
Oh yeah.
And I was sitting next to your teacher, in fact, and that was that was the last time I saw him. But one of the first times I actually sat that close to him, and we, eating and drinking. So you know how that went. But I recall one thing that stood out the first time I saw him. He has massive fists. He has gigantic hams of hands. Really. Yeah, it was impressive to see.
Yeah. Yeah, he can do when you walk the circle. You are relaxed, but you're not.
Yeah.
In fan style, you put your arm out. It's almost impossible to explain it in words. But the elbow, the leading hand, the elbow points down, and the crook of the elbow points directly up. The hand is twisted back and pulled back slightly, and that the tendency is to push the elbow slightly out to the side to take away some of the strain. Now, in fan style, the strain stays because of the position that your hand is in, but you relax around that. So you have the twisting of the tendons and the muscle around the forearm, but that is because of the position of the hand. And you push that hand out, and the other hand pushes around, fingers point towards the elbow joint. And if you do that and relax in that position, although the body the arms are taut, they're taut because of the position. They're not taut because you're
tensing,
adding any strength to them. And you can tensing. You can relax in that, and that curves the back just as it should be, hollows the chest just as it should be, but it keeps your back straight and your head erect because it's only the two hands that are pushing. You don't have to think about anything else then. All you have to think about is the hand pushing out and the other hand pushing under, and the rest of your body position is correct. But the hardest thing of that is relaxing in that position because it's quite difficult.
Yeah, of course.
But he can do it and twist much farther than I ever could and relax in it. But his hands are like, his arms are like steel rods. Wrapped in steel, and his hands are the big hands, and he says that's from the jar carrying for the grip.
Yeah, of course.
And also from some of the sandbag work. We don't do a lot of it, but he says you've got to feel pressure on the hands if you're going to hit something hard with them. The first thing you hit hard shouldn't be somebody's head. because you're going to hurt your
Yeah,
hand. You've got to hit
it's
something
so
hard.
good to hear, because I mean we do some of that too, and it's not as if we're trying to develop. You're not going excessively, but it's exactly for the same reason about one, feeling what it feels like to issue force into something that's going to give you some bite back, and two, to condition your hands to be able to handle that, which is a normal. It's a normal thing. Anytime you hit something, you're going to get something back, and if you hit something hard, you're going to break your bones. So you should at least have some conditioning in that light. And it's just so rare today. People just don't do it. The second they hear that I slap a bag, they're like, "But I thought you did internal arts," and I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm not going to have this conversation now, because it's just, so."
Yeah, so as you said, you don't have to do much. Middle
Exactly.
Range, don't do too much.
Little bit every day.
Same with the big, same with the big spear. Don't do too much, but you've got to get used. If you're going to issue that sort of force, you've got to get used. The body has got to get used to the shaking that comes from suddenly issuing force through it.
Right.
And the big spear helps with that.
Yeah.
And lots of southern styles, all the southern styles that I've done, all do the same thing with the stick.
Okay.
They all do the same thing. They all push out to get the end of the stick to bend. It's like a jolt pushing the body through and out through the stick.
Yeah.
They all do it, and more so in that than they do in any of the other. It's a lot of the northern styles, but they use that without the stick. So the technique is the same. The strike is the same. Sudden issuing forth. So
It's the same.
but you have to have something to practice.
Yeah.
So we use a long spear, and they use a stick.
Yeah.
And the same with the shoulder striking. I've seen it in the wrestling, and I've seen it in I think I've seen it in jiu-jitsu, where they roll the hands and they bang shoulder to shoulder, and they roll the arms around the opposite shoulders.
That's when you're going for over-unders, and you're just you're swimming through.
Well, we do a very similar thing, but we do that before getting used to the body getting hit. So it's less for the under and over. It's more about getting the body used to having a hard force directed against it, barging.
Yeah, we do the same thing. So we do it with shoulders, the front, the back of the shoulders, the thighs, the upper thigh, the back of the thigh, the back of the buttocks, believe it or not, and well,
it's the same in southern praying mantis. They do a lot of that conditioning the same way, barging bodies. It's in a lot of systems. It's just that it's falling away. It's falling away from a lot of the systems. A lot of the older systems.
Yeah, people are too fragile, too lazy, too fragile. They don't want to eat bitter. It's true. So.
Or eat bitter. Yeah. Well, I'll say the amount of information I know would take if I just walked through it, would take me probably 3 hours. If I just walked through all the forms and all the techniques and that, it would take me about 3 hours.
Yeah.
So I have a list of things I do every day, which the Jibeng Gung gives the power that I need to perform the things. I do the ones that open up and do for health. And then I have a relatively strict routine to go through everything I know at full pace at least once a week.
That's good.
And then bits of it to practice it. But I'm retired. So I'm retired and now confined to quarters. So I except for once a week to the local supermarket, and if I have to go out and do any helping, any volunteering work that I've gone in for, the rest of my time is mine. So at 50, nearly 58, I have finally got the time to do my martial arts correctly. If only I could have had it at 25.
Well, that's one of the positives, I think, about a bit of something positive that we can look at about the lockdown, is that it's given people time to focus on things that they didn't want to put the time that was required to put into it. Now you've got nothing but time So if
Yeah.
you didn't have a strict or dedicated or disciplined regiment for these arts, and you were kind of half-assing them, well, at least COVID gave you a time to fix that. I mean, I've always been pretty disciplined, but I found that the time over the last year, apart from training, which was there all the time, every day anyway, to do other things related to my training, like putting things to paper that I'd been intending to put to paper that came from my teacher for all these years, and actually just sitting down and doing it. I've actually managed to do quite a lot. I've been focusing on documenting and just keeping records of things and restoring things, etc. So that's a positive that came out of all of this.
Yeah, the good thing about Mr. Wen is that he wrote everything down, because his teacher would show him once, let him practice, let him ask questions, and then not show him again.
Yeah.
Because you had to make notes. He had to listen. He had to follow exactly, and there was no time to not concentrate. So he had loads of notes, and he's typed them all out, because his handwriting I can't understand.
Okay, good for
and
you.
He's,
he typed it for you. Very good.
He sent me 182 pages of notes. So all I've got to do is learn the 25,000 characters he's used, and I'm halfway there to understanding it. I mean, some of it I have, since I've been locked down, I have tried to make a daily bit of Chinese practice, and it is coming.
Good.
But it's coming very badly.
Oh well, it's coming. Middle path.
I am so envious. I am so envious at your abilities.
Oh.
You and Andrea's abilities. They upset me greatly. But I'm getting there. But the good thing is, say I've got a huge library of information, or everything in there. All the names of all the techniques for the 72 linking grabbing form is sent me. So although I haven't seen it, although I don't know it, I have got all the technique names. Good. And I can see some of the techniques from some of the other things. And hopefully, when we get back together, hoping this year, but I've got a terrible feeling it might be next year.
Yeah, we'll have to see. We'll have to see.
Well, you got the Olympics, Winter Olympics next year, haven't you, in Beijing?
Apparently, allegedly.
Yeah. So, well, they'll do anything to not let that go.
Yeah.
I am sure they will do everything in their power to make sure that happens. So, hopefully by then.
Yeah, well, it'll be good to catch up with you, and we can get together and do this again in person. Just have a nice chat over a good meal again here in person. It'll be great to do that. So,
well, okay.
This has been really good. I don't know if you run a group of that train fun style, or you teach at all, or if there's anything that people can get in contact if you're willing for any of that.
Yeah, I'll send you the a link to my Facebook and
all right
page, and then you can stick it under.
All
there.
right, I'll put it in the show notes and the introduction, etc. So then people can find that.
Because the government has said that we may be able to meet people from afar in about a month's time.
Oh.
But at the moment, we have to wave from opposite sides of the road, and we certainly can't go inside. So
yeah.
We're just waiting. We're waiting to see what happens. I'm hoping to restart the few people that come to my home.
Good.
On a one-to-one basis in the next month, and then we'll see how it goes.
Well, that'll be good.
But
hopefully.
Yes. Well, thanks very much for your time.
No, thank you.
It's been nice.
I've really enjoyed this. I'm sure a lot of people that hadn't known or didn't know much about fun style Bagua have learned a lot from this, and hopefully more and more people will get to know about the style and more of the beauty of the Chinese martial arts and the art of Bagua. So thank you for your time.
No, thank you.
All right, and we'll be in touch. You keep healthy and keep safe over there.
And you, best of all.
Okay, bye-bye.